Good evening. Hey, yeah. Grab the other mic if you want. Okay. Welcome to the Jai-Alai Magazine, issue number 5, release reading. I'm Scott Cunningham. I'm the founder and director of Oh Miami. It's the organization that publishes Jai-Alai Magazine. We're an organization that celebrates Miami through the lens of poetry. We do that a number of different ways. One of them is a festival we do in April. Another one is a publishing imprint. Another one is a visiting writer series. And the other sort of tentpole thing we do is this magazine, which we started in 2010. And the idea of the magazine was to kind of take a picture or a portrait of Miami literary life for a certain period of time. So there's, if you look at the covers of these things, the bars on the front have been slowly disappearing. So every time we do a new one of the colors disappears. And so we're going to count down to 1, and then the experiment will be over, and we'll figure out what to do next. But so during that time, we're really trying to get a picture not only of who's writing here in Miami, but also the kind of writing that is influencing Miami, or we think should be influencing Miami. And sort of the heart of that is the editor of Jai-Alai Magazine, José Portela, who has just done an amazing job with turning this magazine into an incredible reflection of Miami in all of its linguistic glory. We've had such an incredible diversity of voices in multiple languages in the magazine since he took over, and I'm so excited that he's running the show. So taking it from here, José Portela.
Thanks, Scott, and thank you all for coming. We got here and there was no power, and let there be light. This is a really important issue. It's my favorite one, the best one, the halfway one, the 5th one, also the 6th one. A really, really special issue. I say this every issue, but once again, we've managed to have another issue where most of the contributors are local. A lot of them are here tonight. We have a lot of different things that make this issue a really special one. We have the translations of Achio Ovejas, and who could not be here tonight, and we're running a dossier of the Cuban poet Nicolás Guillén. We have some work by Bianca Stone. We have all kinds of amazing things. Tonight, I'll begin with a poem of a dear friend, a longtime collaborator, Jimena Gomez, who could not be here because, like most of us who work in poetry, she's an adjunct, and she couldn't get out of teaching a class. And she's a Colombian poet. Let me see if I can. Jimena Gomez is a Colombian psychologist, professor of Spanish as a second language, which is why she's not here, translator and poet. Her poems have appeared in various digital and print publications, and some have been translated into Portuguese. Her work is also featured in the anthology of 21st century poets, edited by the Spanish poet Fernando Sabido Sánchez. And what ends up happening with the Spanish submissions that we get is that I translate them all. I just found 2 translators that we trust, but not in time for this issue. So from this issue on, there'll be more translators of our Spanish submissions into English. Until today, it's been a labor of love on my part. As part of our commitment to really widening the conversation, bringing it beyond just the usual voices and really representing what Miami is, which is a multicultural, multilinguistic city. Jimena Gomez, postoperatorio. La mesita, la taza, los restos de almíbar y café cristalizados. 2 rajas de limón cortado hace 3 días. Mosquitos que recorren las tripas de la pulpa. Frascos de vidrio con azúcar y miel seca. Todo está en orden. Hay talco en el resuello de las sábanas, las fundas, talco aún en los pies, el pijama y el suelo. Todo está en orden. Reflejos de Vermeer en los objetos, en el rostro de cera, en las marcas de la crucifixión con agujas de suero. Parece que él durmiera. Post-op. The little table, the mug, the remains of syrup and coffee solidified, 2 lemon wedges, 3 days old, mosquitoes hovering over the pulpy innards, glass jars filled with sugar and dried honey. Everything's in order. There's talcum on the panting, on the sheets, the pillowcases, talcum still on the feet, the pajamas, and on the floor. Everything's in order. Reflections of Vermeer on everything, on the wax face, on the scars of the ivy needle crucifixion. It's as if he was sleeping. And next, I'm going to ask a very special person who is in great part responsible for this issue and to whom I owe many thanks, is Marcy Calabretta. And she'll be reading Bianca Stone's poetry. And Bianca Stone is a very special poet, another friend, and also an illustrator, where when you get the issue, which you can buy at the Books and Books tent, after the reading, you'll see her illustrations, which are just incredible. And for the visual work in the magazine, we usually only do it in black and white, but these drawings specifically needed to run in color, and when you see them in person, you'll see why. Marcy?
Very short here. Welcome. It is an honor to work with Jose and to work on this magazine. It is indeed beautiful. It feels beautiful. Can you hear me? Yes, excellent. Okay, so it is also an honor for me to read Bianca Stone's work. I have admired her work for a very long time, so this is a great thrill. I will be reading the second poem in the issue, which is called Vow, but she has 3 poems, all of which are very much worth reading. Vow. For the dimensional shift, the kneecaps, the vagina, wallpaper with its tortured profiles of leaves, antique polka dot, green conifers, shuttlecock of pills, consumed without results, cigarette at dusk, schmoozing onto literary balconies and throwing oneself off, saying goodbye by walking backward, exit, bowing, the tights run, the bra strap, hydrating for eternity, for what? Laying on a red Victorian couch, saying the wrong things to your mother, swearing in your sleep, dancing with women, squeegeeing the yogurt container with your finger, sweating in front of strangers, swallowing inflamed plastic drink swords, dipping naked into the word hedge fund to see how it feels, bright orange parking ticket, saving someone else's date on a blue piece of paper. The warlock getting up to pee in the dark. All around you, the music of exiled pianists and the brain systems therein. The delicate life of a carnivorous plant, its muscle in the air. For dreaming of eating the heart of a polar bear in the snow, standing, picking up his body, carrying him into the woods to be consumed by other bears. You will not die feeling embittered. Thank you.
And just because I want you to hear Bianca Stone's bio so that you go look her up. And she's a poet and visual artist. Her books include Someone Else's Wedding Vows and Antigonic, a collaboration with Anne Carson, one of my favorite poets of all time. And she's co-founder and editor of the press, Monk Books, and chairs the Ruth Stone Foundation from her home in Brooklyn, New York. And she did a reading recently, earlier in the year, which was incredible. I wasn't able to go, but I heard that it was beautiful. The next person that we'll read tonight is another one of our assistant editors, which is Nadra Mabrouk. And Nadra will read from two of our contributors who could not be here tonight because they do not live here. There are two people that we solicited from. As Scott mentioned, we're not only publishing local writers because we believe that it is really important to bring work that we find important to be part of the poetic conversation here. It is as much about featuring and capturing as it is feeding and informing the kind of poetic conversation that's happening here. The first poet that Nadra will read is Carly Hoffman. Carly Hoffman is a current MFA candidate in poetry at Columbia University, where she is the poetry editor for issue 53 of Columbia, a journal of literature and art. She has studied poetry at the New York State Writers Institute at Skidmore College and has been awarded fellowships and grants from the Juniper Institute and Columbia University. And you'll see that a lot of the contributors in this issue and in our past issues are student writers. That is part of our commitment to bring all writers into the conversation, and also because, especially when we feature the student writers, some of which we'll be reading tonight, that are local, it's also to show that you don't need to be graduated from an MFA to be an amazing poet. Nadra.
Thank you. Alaska. Everyone becomes darkened by Alaska, crooked with weight of marmots and wild-haired children who chase them, sticks held by pink, slender fingers, the small engines of their bodies caged with laughter, glinting, the scene struck by a carnival danger no one speaks of. In dreams, the dead come into houses, always at random and the way we imagine, bringing the wind with their gold raincoats. We want to wash their faces in sunlight. They want us to show them what they smelled like. I can't tell you the invention that makes light fold out of the room when they enter, but it's called Alaska, glacial, possessed by night. In childhood, I believed in God so carelessly I'd kneel in the backyard, brittle December palms against dirt in prayer, careless as the rooms children vanish to when we forget to look. Thank you.
Madeline Barnes grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her poems have recently appeared in journals I can't pronounce, so I'll read the ones I can. The Rattling Wall, Oakland Review, and North Central Review. Her chapbook, The Mark My Body Draws in Light, was published by Finishing Line Press this year, and she was named an emerging writer by the Poetry Ireland Introduction Series. She is an MFA candidate at New York University.
Place of shelter. In Dublin, foxes circled the basilicas. The chorus of their estrangement distorted the greenness of ground swells. Their furs inflected dusk as they roved the city's inner ear. In Italy, my sister had a fox tattooed on her floating rib. Lean and red, drawn mid-leap, it healed itself with paws raised, a sketch more delicate than honeycomb. The foxes traced my path on nights I walked through Rathmines, drifting from the shaded blackthorn hedges, green bottles between us, glass and roadkill, their paws crushed blossoms under faded streetlight, apprehensive. At night's end, I prayed to stall the sunrise, a fact that only vixens scream, polyphonic sequences of separate warning. The males nudged the turf, upset the rabbit dens. Restless, I watched the guard's flashlight, climbed the stone wall, cut my kneecap on a spike of rusted iron. Home rode further away from me, penalty for drifting off on my magnetic voyage. Had to guess at God, had to study the escarpments of another continent. I could feel America replacing me. In these nocturnal animals, I found clever priests, regal in their photospheric howls, the firmament hailed. We could sprint away before dawn when protesters rallied to fight abortion laws, We could save our garnet, our blood red, our pollen. We could flee the shaming banners where the holy surf was calm. Thank you.
Next up is a very special person. It's Anik Adebabinsky. She's one of the most talented poets I know, for sure. She's part of the Miami family, and she's just an incredible person. Get to know her if you can. Anik Adebabinsky is a Canadian studying for her MFA in poetry at Florida International University in Miami. You can find some of her recent poems in Best New Poets 2014, Sync Review, and Hobart. And she also published a translation of, what was the name of the poet? That's right. And it's an incredible poem because it's very short and it's got these tiny lines. And we translated it in the context of the Translation Club, which is a now dormant, soon to be awakened Miami project, where we get together with different literary translators in Miami and we workshop each other's poems. And this poem that ran in a previous issue was a result of that. So a lot of the stuff that we run in the magazine that's local is stuff that we've had contact with. It's people that we're connected to, and it's part of a family, if you will. Anik.
Thanks so much, Jose. This poem I have in the Jai-Alai is called Free Fall, and it's written for Felix Baumgartner, who did the jump from, what's it called? Really high up in space? No, it wasn't. Was it? A hot air balloon. Yeah. It was 2 years ago, so I was a little fuzzy on the details. Anyway, it was a space jump. I'm trying not to say the sponsorship but anyway, I'll just read it. Okay, Free Fall. For Felix Baumgartner. I'm going over, Felix says, and in complete commitment, complete abandon, he does almost nothing to make himself supersonic. When falling from twice the height of lightning, all that hints at motion is the raspy satellite of a person breathing through the bruised atmosphere. He descends through the death zone, that Stygian overworld where airborne devils casually burst lungs, boil blood for sport. Air so thin he feels no resistance, no pull against his spacesuit. Suspended with the sun flares, corn silk white, carbon, charcoal, it goes gray again. He's a moon in the Dead Sea. And then I'll just read one more. This one it's a form poem. It's called A Golden Shovel, and it takes a stanza from Yusuf Kuminyaka's Yellow Jackets and uses the lines on the right side of the thing. Okay, so wash bucket. He showered with a small sick bird. They stood together under the barn roof out there, bathing in watery trace chains. Man and bird lathered silly in velvet froth. The blue wings just blue. No one stopped the water. By now, we all knew a man like that was best left to his great axe. Goofy medicine, we'd learned, worked. A calmness came over the farm. He turned off the water and whinnied at the morning. He was once a man who slept in bar bathrooms and felt nothing. Then, we don't know what happened to the man. The farm was quiet, the whole field empty. He was somewhere beautiful, we hoped. He came back blue-black and started to give good advice. From the sky, we'd fallen into this world, and when we fell, we broke. That was why, he said, climbing on the main beam of the barn, clamping his hands around the wood, we loved to try to get back. Thank you.
Next up is Casey Belcher. And Casey's work has been published in Court Green, Gargoyle, Slab, Hoot Review, Tiger Tail, a South Florida annual, Two Hawks Quarterly, the Florida Book Review, and Borderlands, Texas Poetry Review. Casey, aside from being an amazing poet, is also part of the O Miami family, one of our staunchest volunteers, and I'm really happy to have featured her in here.
Hey guys, it is bright. Thank you guys for all the hard work you do year-round, and really appreciate everything. It's gorgeous, great work. Thank you. This poem's called Song of 17 Years. What if one day the prehistoric crickets fell silent? Each nymph burrowed deep in the earth, their legs and wings busy vibrating the frequency of surface level steady, singing each and every city into a new wave of hibernation hum. Crops free to flourish, trees and grass exhale, eardrums unwind, sleep is restored. Imagine 17 years later, even the dog day cicadas awaken, return from their slumber, surfacing as the weight of the ground holds strong while they slip slide through root after root. The soil gives way, stripping them from their delicate skins, a trophy normally found on tree bark and stalk alike, emerging, no longer the pestilence of before, into a new breed of hibernating butterfly or moth, their once translucent, thinly veined membranes of wings filled out, fanned into an aesthetic array, a visual ventriloquism that can force the most devout praying mantis from its bough. Imagine each of the cicadas' 5 eyes watching while the world reverses revolution after revolution until every cherry-nosed whiskey drinker can share an insouciant sip with a sapling before drifting off, awakening in classical antiquity.
Part of what we do in the issue is that we curate the issue according to conversations. And Casey's poem, which engages the cicada, which is frequently in American poems, US American poems, I should say, is in conversation with a poem in here by Dave Landsberger, which bemoans the use of the cicada. But the use of the cicada as kind of background noise in poems. Usually the cicada will show up in a poem, it's just like, and the cicadas, and kind of as like an oral signifier of the afternoon or something like that. What I found interesting about Casey's poem is that the cicada is a being in the poem. It has a full life and a full presence, which is what Dave loves. And you'll see kind of how he does a similar thing, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek in a very Dave Landsberger style when I read it. The next person that we'll be reading is Rob Goyanes. And that is, here it is. Rob Goyanes is a writer from Miami, Florida. He has written for the Miami Rail, WLRN, Hyperallergic, and others. He has published books of poetry and essays, including De Pressure Moderne and Jason Handelsman, A Partial Archaeology of Otherworldly Conformity, through the support of Cannonball. His most recent book, One Minute Tour, was created during a residency at Meta Gallery at Locust Projects.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to read a couple poems. One of them is from the Jai-Alai issue. Big thanks to Jai-Alai and O Miami and University of Wynwood and all affiliated partners. This one is called Just to See You Smile. History is only getting harder to understand, and you're only getting slower. And the way that Barack Obama uses the word folks is pretty weird. And I find myself crucifying my eyes on the 4 corners of my room. This one is called Eternities on Either Side. In fleeing one enemy, you may very well fly into the jaws of another and find the food between his teeth to be quite funny. Time is a snake in the grass, and the grass is a gift, sucka. I think the poetry I think of while jogging might just be a Twitter bot, and the heat won't have their three-peat, and I will lay down, and the mattress will groan with our embrace. This one is Supple Energies. A man in an apron calls out over the shakes and rattles of industry, "Opal cream?" It cues everybody shuffling, a smoothing of pants, holding of pregnant bellies. Then, a brave one with a squarish head leans forward, skyward furrowed brows, lips nearly trembling. "I'm opal cream." All of us are still, silent, posted up. And then, the crescendoing sirens of forklifts come upon us, enemy throng through dense thickets of aisles, and over their roar, "White willow, yes hello, white willow!" Intense teal? No, white willow! Oh. So we all go on waiting. Thanks.
The next reader, if I can get this to work right, is Fabienne Sylvia Josephat. Is the author of Requiem pour Anaïs, a novel published in Nice, France in 2002. Her publications include the Master's Review, Mandala Journal, Small Axe Literary Journal, and the Caribbean Writer, Grist Magazine, and Fourth Genre. She lives in Miami with her husband and two small dachshunds.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be part of this beautiful publication. Thank you so much for including me. This poem is called Portrait of Exiles at Dinner. They begin a contemplation around the fruits of hard labor, a pyramid of hard-boiled eggs in a glass bowl from a wedding in Montagne Noire, sardines holding hands in a Pyrex pan, a gargantuan red snapper blushing in a Creole sauce, salmon, coleslaw, and a favorite Easter necessity, beets bleeding purple in a salade russe. Their hands are folded piously as little children do when they wait in line at the confessional inventing sins. The piety of a Haitian family is remarkable. In the absence of priests, they still manage to pray, heads bowed, as if to re-enter themselves for a guided meditation, and then also to inhale more of the smoked cod, but really to remember what Easter was like before their forced exodus. Breaking bread is an active exercise in remembering. Some things will never be forgotten. First, Christ is risen, hallelujah. Second, Papa Doc burns in 7 hells for banishing them from their home. Third, the way to get to La Tribune, the old establishment, half gym, half theater, home to their 2 for the price of 1 movies, and their kisses stolen in darkness, and the infancy of anarchy. Of course, La Tribune was torn down long ago, but they must decipher its map. To get there, you arrive at the Place du Champ de Mars after you pass the Musée du Panthéon National, or was it the Galerie d'Art Nader? Confusion scrambles the memories, so the uncle pours more wine to loosen tongues. A gallery and a museum are two different things, and Le Palace Hotel was nowhere near Mupana. The conversation dwindles after the meal, when the wine has dilated their pupils so much that their eyes are now wells from which they can only draw tears. They douse the pain de maïs with the rum they've brought from home and eat quietly, wondering what the country looks like now, what still remains of a city obliterated, of childhood streets annihilated, half an island mutilated. And I can read one more, right? Okay. This one's called Hair Poem. That needle scratch, that lick on vinyl, that banjo strum, that high-pitched screech we hear tonight is that of my hair under the metal teeth of afro picks, and my mother thumbing the chords of my kalimba. Taming wilderness is a serious business, and with a dip of her finger in the maskriti butter, she glides the jelly, smooth and easy, along the strands of hair. She tries again. The comb bites the knots and rakes down the part, and now the terrazzo beneath our feet is blanketed with kernels of coiled peppercorns, failed resistance against the metal jaws. Her fingers jive now, rumba, cha-cha with the section now, is how she twines and weaves and domesticates that thing I grew to hate. One day, I say, one day, I will have my mother's hair, soft and beautiful, dark and lovely, finessed to perfection. Meanwhile, she says, pick up that dispersed herd, those fallen feathers of your flock, and toss them in this fire so that they may burn and shrivel down to an oily pulp, so that we may stir this tar again in the ember oil of that jar. My mother wants to regrow and recycle what's come out, preserve its Goliath strength. One day, I will have hair like hers. But meanwhile, as she squeezes my ribs between the pillars of her thighs, she clips the tail end of my dreams with a barrette, a pink poodle, a purple bear, a gloss white bunny, and makes me princess pretty with a bow on top. Thank you.
So the first poem that Fabienne read, like Casey's, is in conversation with Dave, is in conversation with another set of poems in the issue, which are the poems of Frank Baez. And Frank Baez was featured in the magazine in a previous issue, and the poems in that issue went on to become a whole book that we will be releasing this Thursday at Ball and Chain at 7 p.m., and we encourage you to come. The reason for including both Frank and Dave in this issue is it being the 5th issue, the best issue, the 6th issue, and the middle issue, is that we're both looking back at the writers we've loved and looking forward to those books of those writers we've loved that we're publishing. And so Frank Baez was translated, his book, Anoche Soñé que era un DJ, was translated into English by P. Scott Cunningham and Hoyt Rogers, and it became Last Night I Dreamt I Was a DJ. And so we chose 3 short poems from that collection, and I will read the versions in Spanish and Scott will read them in English. Éxodo. Aguardaron a que se vaciaran las casas para luego recogerlas y meterlas en sus maletas. Descolgaron las nubes, la luna, las estrellas, el tendido eléctrico con sus palomas, los tinacos, los pájaros y las antenas. Envolvieron el paisaje tropical como si fuese un lienzo y lo empacaron todo, como si se tratase de un circo que se mueve a otra ciudad, esperanzados en volver a inflarlo, levantarlo y clavarlo a martillazos en algún descampado de Nueva York o Barcelona.
Exodus. They waited until the houses were emptied out to pick them up and stuff them into their luggage. They took down the clouds, the moon, the stars, the telephone wires with their pigeons, the pots, the birds, and the antennas. They rolled up the landscape of the tropics as if it were a canvas and packed it all up like a circus they could carry to another city, something they could reinflate, lift up, and pin down into the dirt of a vacant lot in New York or Barcelona.
Quita sueño. Perder una pierna trabajando de operario en una zona franca duele menos que cuando los gringos te donan una prótesis de plástico que te pondrás para emborracharte en los colmados y que apoyarás con fuerza en la acera al retornar a casa, temeroso de que los perros del barrio puedan morderla y arrancártela.
Quita Sueño, which is the name of a little part of Dominican Republic.
It's a town, right?
Yeah, it's like a town. I think it's like a part of Santo Domingo.
And so the word quita sueño means, it literally means like sleep
remover, right?
Sleep remover, yeah.
Quita Sueño. Losing a leg working as a machinist in a free trade zone hurts less than when the gringos give you a plastic prosthetic you wear to get drunk at the corner store and lean all of your weight into as you're resting on the sidewalk on the walk home, afraid of the neighborhood dogs biting it and ripping it off.
Nocturno. De este lado del malecón se distinguen las luces de los edificios y los faroles de la costa como si fuesen barcos. A veces, un barco mercantil o un crucero sale del puerto con todas sus luces prendidas y atraviesa el mar. Entonces, uno imagina que las luces parpadeantes de la costa también se transforman en barcos y que las casas y los edificios se desplazan por el mar y que Santo Domingo entero se echa a navegar.
Nocturne. From this side of the jetty, you can make out each light from a building or a street lamp as if they were boats. Occasionally, a freighter or a cruise ship leaves the port with all its lights glowing and heads out across the sea. And then you imagine those flickering coastal lights also transforming into ships, and the houses and buildings begin to unmoor, and all of Santo Domingo sets sail.
And we'll close with two poems by Dave Landsberger. Dave's book, Suicide by Jaguar, which I translated into Suicidio por Jaguar, will also be released at Jai-Alai, at Ball and Chain on Thursday. It was an incredible experience translating the manuscript for so many reasons that I'll tell you all about over wine after this. And they are the poems that close the issue. History fair. After a shoeless dinner marked by the waitstaff's argument over the tape deck, we walk along the unwashed, angled torso of Art Deco, where men with tripods and orange vests act like they're doing something at the hour of Marlboro lights, hair gel, and tan-skinned platonic playthings. Until we find a park fertilized by hobos with a perfectly constructed mini diorama of the city of Miami. It is beautiful, in a bonsai tree sort of way. And you tell me, the secret to loving Miami is to never say that you are in love with it. Tell no one about the places you love or they'll get hit by a bulldozer. Everyone here is a budding real estate developer. There is a little big wind blowing through the tiny streets and tin windows, rattling its foundations, begging me to think about the places I love. Yambo on Flagler, where in June they hawk teddy bears and roses in front of the faces of kissing lovers. Miami Jai-Alai and Hialeah, where they chuck pelotas from their cestas on the cancha to win the superfecta. Saturday nights at Habana Vieja, the serenade of a bald man from the Sahuesera who romances las rubias, as the bartender, a former Jai-Alai player, slow dances with the thick glass señoras. Madison Hammock, where babies sport diapers or bandanas and swim in the oasis beside the nectarine-peeling abuelitas. The October elation of an entire city shutting off its air conditioners. The posture fashionistas at Coco Walk dying to unveil their designer velour sweaters. The whorehouse turned bar, Fox's, where every time Hotel California slides on the needle, I trigger the secret skip switch on the free jukebox. The chongas, the weirdos sipping Bordeaux and hotel windows, the shedding iguanas, the everlasting sunbathing dude in a Speedo. The street corner with the man selling shrimp in Ziploc bags, inventing a living. Oh Creole, oh Espanol, oh Croatoa, and my dear, I tell you nothing. Those men with the tripods and orange vests, are they mapping the changing of these seasons too? I am so sorry, my dear dinner date, for not being here with this moment, or with you. So lo siento. Ay, I missed the debut of the night, turning Miami upside down, shaking out our money and shaking the yucca, which drops a gecko onto mini Miami, a nervous, undestructive Godzilla. Feria de la Historia. Después de comer sushi descalzos, tras la discusión de los meseros sobre la casetera, caminamos por el sucio y angulado torso de Art Deco, donde los hombres con sus trípodes y chalecos anaranjados se hacen los ocupados a la hora de los Marlboro suaves, del gel para el pelo, de las muñecas platónicas y bronceadas, hasta que encontramos un parque fertilizado por vagabundos, con una mini maqueta de Miami hecha a la perfección. Es algo bello, con esa belleza de los bonsai. Y tú me dices, para querer a Miami, nunca debes decir que estás enamorado de ella. A nadie hable sobre los lugares que amas o los arrasará un bulldozer. Aquí todos son promotores inmobiliarios en ciernes. Un pequeño gran viento sopla por las calles diminutas y las ventanas de lata, agitando sus cimientos, suplicándome que piense en los lugares que amo. Jambo, en Flagler, donde en junio los amantes que sufren el asedio de las rosas y los osos de peluche. El Jai-Alai de Miami en Hialeah, donde se tiran pelotas con las cestas a la cancha para ganar la superfecta. Los sábados por la noche en Habana Vieja, la serenata de un calvo de la sagüesera enamora a las rubias, mientras que el barman, antiguo jugador de Jai-Alai, baila despacito con las señoras de los lentes gruesos. Madison Hammock, donde los bebés llevan pañuelos o pañales y nadan en el oasis junto a las abuelitas que pelan sus nectarinas. El alborozo octubresco de una ciudad que apaga todos sus aires acondicionados. Los fanáticos de la moda en Coco Walk muriéndose por lucir sus suéteres de velour de marca. Fox's, ese prostíbulo de venido bar, donde cada vez que suena Hotel California le doy el interruptor secreto de la vitrola. Las chongas, los tipos raros que se toman su Bordeaux en las ventanas de los hoteles, las iguanas que mudan la piel, ese perenne personaje tomando el sol en trusa Speedo. La esquina del hombre que vende camarones en bolsas de Ziploc, inventándose la vida. Oh creyol, oh español, oh croatoa. Y ni la mitad te cuento, mi cielo. Esos hombres con sus trípodes y chalecos anaranjados, ¿será que también cartografían los cambios de estas estaciones? Lo siento mucho, mi querida cita cenar. Siento no estar ni aquí, ni contigo, ni con este momento. Estoy muy sorry. Oh, my God, me perdí el estreno de la noche que pone a Miami patas arriba, vaciándonos los bolsillos y agitando la yuca que deja caer una lagartija, nervioso e inofensivo Godzilla sobre la mini Miami. This last poem is easily one of the best poems ever written, and one of the best poems that I've had the pleasure of translating. And it's called Bad Poetry, which is not what's in this issue. The cicada lives in poems as an alarm clock, redacted to one sense, which makes none, because its hammerhead eyes sense its husk, and its husk is the future tense of its body's diary. Once revered as a symbol of purity, the cicada lived off the dew and dew alone. Its inclusion in poems is akin to coffee over tea or losing the U in color. It means something, but we've forgotten why, no longer care, content to subsist on the husk's meaning. This poem, this line, is didactic, which is bad. My poet friends warned me not to get too didactic or sentimental with this piece. There are no graver sins than didacticism or sentimentality. But I'm the one considering the cicada's contribution to the pristine sheen and glaze of bad poetry. And if I have to gasp at panting dogs snarfing on cicadas as they're walked by masters holding steaming bags of feces near their hearts, well, then I'd call that a personification for how insects must perceive us. A terrarium that treasures boxes and bags and lingerie and explosions and hot tubs. And if life is a virus, if our 14 billion hands have ham-boned us into unavoidable oblivion, then keep listening to cicadas, your ear morphing into a sweating pitcher of water. Never hold a cicada, holding it like the dew pinches the grasses with aquarium dollops, and surely never lay, making the dirt and grass your luxurious, custom-made longboat to the heavens, letting the cicadas piano over you, an above-ground swimming pool of cicada husks, walls of rigid snot, your body curving, suffocating, one end a head, the other an ass, an Ouroboros crippled by its spine. Thank you. And that concludes our reading for the night. We'll have some tunes by Black Wax. There's some wine in the back. The issues are for sale at the Books and Books tent, which is right outside. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being here. The contributors, Scott, Melody, Christina, everyone. Thanks.